this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a Game Boy game, and that happens to be Banishing Racer. Now, just from the title of this game and the way how it looks, you're probably expecting this to be a racing game, but actually it's a platformer. This happens to be the second time where I've been mind-fucked by a game that looks like a racing game, but it's actually a platformer, the first one being Wacky Racers on NES. So I don't know what the muffin fluff is up with that, but anyways, this game was developed and published by Jaleco, and it was released in 1991 on the Game Boy and only in Japan. So I don't know, maybe it's a Japan thing where they like to make games that look like racing games but are really not. So anyways, as for the story in this game, there's really nothing much I need to say here other than the fact that you're playing as a car. And this is before Lightning McQueen from Cars was even a thing. And you gotta take down a giant robotic bird. And you gotta cross all over America to do so. In America! Nothing more complicated than that. So anyway, now let's start talking about the gameplay. So you gotta get from one end of the screen to the next end, and there are 3 main stages within an area. And since this game takes place in America, that means that this game is at least somewhat educational when it comes to geography, since this game was released in Japan only. So just like most typical platformers, you can jump on enemies to kill them, and when you jump on them, you bounce off, and you can actually jump onto more enemies, and if you jump on 4 in a row, then you get a 1-up. There's not a whole lot of power-ups that you get to collect, but there are some hidden areas that you can find within the game that can give you a little S token that allows you to be invincible for a few seconds. And other than the typical running and jumping stages, they do have a couple of flying stages where your car ends up having wings and you gotta fly through the stages and dodge everything. And I don't know why, but when your car has wings, it kinda looks like a flying pig. Makes me wonder if the developers of this game went to a Pink Floyd concert. And after you're done with the 3 stages per state, you do get to fight a boss at the end of them. So that's all I gotta say about this one, is that it's a very typical platformer for a Game Boy game. So now let's start talking about the game's controls, and the controls in this game are pretty frustrating. Now, because this is a Game Boy game, the button layout is very easy to understand, you know, moving around and then one button jumps, and the other one gives you a boost while you're going forward. Very similar to a run button, but this time you just gotta keep pressing it to keep getting those boost powers. But as for the response timing on the moving and the jumping, well, they're very slow as you would suspect, and they also seem to be very floaty as well. I guess that's pretty common for a Game Boy game to have some very floaty controls. I remember an older Game Boy game I did a review on was Tailgater, and that one also had floaty controls, but that one actually felt a lot better. But probably one of the worst parts about the controls in this game would have to be the hit detection. And it's only on jumping on enemies, because sometimes if you just hit them in a slight corner, you'll die instead, which is kinda bullshit. And yeah, I forgot to mention, this game has one-hit deaths. So that's another thing that adds to the frustration of this game, because goddamn, I've died a lot of times throughout this game, and the most common way that I died really had to do with the fact of I jumped onto an enemy and I happened to bounce off into a hazardous. Or I tried going backwards because an enemy was getting too close, but I ended up dying instead. And that's due to the fact that going left or right is pretty delayed. So yeah, overall, the controls in this one are just really annoying, and this game will probably piss you off. Because this game really feels like a trial and error. Now, as for the other things in this game, like the graphics, I gotta say, I actually really like the graphics in this game, and keep in mind, I'm looking at this for Game Boy standards. So I do like some of the enemy designs of the games. You know, you get a lot of different types of cars, you get other vehicles, and then you get a lot of other random shit. Like, for an example, you get fucking Donkey Kong throwing barrels at you. Like, what? And you got this casino chick's leg that kicks you in the face. And I gotta say, it's a pretty funny idea. And I do like some of the game's backgrounds in this game. I think they are very fitting to some of the areas that you go to. So yeah, overall, the graphics in this one, I do like it quite a bit. And yeah, obviously there's no color in the game since, you know, it's on the original Game Boy. But for what it is, I do think they did do a pretty good job with the sprite work. Now, as for the game's music, it's actually pretty decent for the most part. It's not like the most amazing soundtrack you'll ever hear, but I think it is pretty catchy at times. And the songs are also very upbeat, which also does suit with this game since this is a very happy looking game. And there's no real bad songs throughout the game. Most of the songs are either just decent at best or just pretty good but not mind-blowing. So now, if you want to go out and buy this game, since it is only in Japan, it is actually interesting to know that Game Boys are indeed region-free. But before you want to start grabbing this one, there is one thing you have to know, is that from the 2 copies that I've seen right here, is that there is one selling for $120 and there's another one selling for $300, and both of them are loose copies. So, yeah, so you want to buy a copy of this now? I mean, you can always just sell your car to be able to afford a Game Boy game with a car in it. Because if you own a real copy of Banishing Racer, then you don't need a fucking car. Cars are for pussies. Because everyone knows that if you buy an expensive game, that means that it's totally gonna help you out with your everyday life, whether it be going to work, getting the groceries, or visiting some friends and family. Because it's totally a necessity. Okay, in all seriousness, fuck no. So now, as for my overall thoughts on this game, Banishing Racer is just about mediocre. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking that mediocre is being too generous, and yeah, it probably might be a little bit, but for the most part though, I totally didn't hate this game. It's just this game has a lot of cheap fucking deaths. And the controls don't help matters since they are pretty delayed and slow. Now, despite this game having some really fucked up difficulty spikes, the game is forgiving in one way, in the sense that if you get a game over at, let's say, stage 3-3, you only go back to 3-1 instead of all the way back at the very beginning of the game. Now that would have been horseshit, but thankfully they were at least a little bit generous on that. But this game overall is just not nearly as fun as I would have liked it to be, which is a shame because, you know, I like the idea of the game and I like some of the stages and such. Even though the stage Denver is a fucking asshole, and I hope to God that the real place Denver doesn't have like a bunch of shit flying everywhere. But if you do want to play a game that involves cars that is also made by Jaleco, there is a City Connection, which is actually a pretty decent game. It's a hell of a lot better than this game. So Banishing Racer should be banished from being a racing game. Oh, wait a minute, it's not a racing game. Then fuck it. It should just be banished to the Shadow Realm in America. So, with that being said, that'll take us to the end of this video, so thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day. But as long as you don't get banished while playing this game, then you're good to go.
I can't believe you committed suicide. I cannot believe you committed suicide. How could you have done this? How could you have committed suicide?